It's been great to be back in person and having these lectures throughout the winter. Thank you for your support and spreading the word about our programming at the museum, and we definitely couldn't do it without you. A friendly reminder that if you did not check in with the front desk when you came in, please do so. We do like to track how many people are coming to our programs. Our final speaker for this year's series is Columbia River Bar Pilots dispatcher, Samantha Steerman. Samantha Steerman comes from a long line of Oregonians who have been enchanted by the Oregon-Washington coastal areas. She is fascinated by all facets of history involving the mouth of the Columbia River. She has a degree in anthropology from Portland State University, has volunteered for Knappton Cove Heritage Center since 2009, and has worked in the local maritime industry since 2013. Samantha joined the Columbia River Bar Pilots as a dispatcher in July of 2020. As a reminder, we'll do questions all the way at the end, and we'll have a microphone for them. So without further ado, please welcome Samantha Steerman.
Okay, here we go. Thank you for coming and visiting me on Valentine's Day, also Oregon's birthday, 164 years. Also my half birthday, also the day I applied for this job, 2020. So coming full circle is kind of amazing, never thought I would be. All right, so I'll try and get right into this. I have a lot of stuff to talk about. I'm not doing this from notes, I'm doing this from memory, so might be a little bit clunky. I apologize in advance, but I will do the best I can and to get through as much stuff as possible. I was worried I wouldn't have enough content for the time, but then I realized I have too much content at the time. I will do the best I can, but I might speak quickly. About me, yes, I do come from a long line of Oregonians. I'm 6th generation on my mother's side. I came on the Oregon Trail. 5th generation on my father's side. I grew up coming to this area my entire life. There was something about not just Astoria, but the Long Beach Peninsula that just grabbed me as a child, and I wanted to know more about it, what made it so interesting. Part of it was shipwrecks, part of it pioneer history, and part of it native history. Initially, I worked for a while after I graduated high school, decided I wanted to get a job, and came to a company called Merchants Exchange, which is very heavily involved in the maritime industry. They're kind of like a 411 of the maritime industry, reporting on vessel movements. With that, it gave me some experience to come here. I did, when I went back to school, wanted to do maritime archaeology out here. People told me you'll never get a job doing that, you'll never get paid for doing that, which, not necessarily wrong. So I decided to do a focus on the Chinook. I do have about 10 years of experience in this industry, which helped me to get to where I am today, and I'll talk a little more about that as I go along. So, dispatchers, what the heck do they do? We do assign pilots to jobs, but there's more to that. For the job itself, there's only 2 of us. One who works the first half of the month, one who works the second half. My first half of the month counterpart is on right now. I split my time between living in Portland on my time off and living in Ocean Park, a little bit north of Ocean Park when I'm working. We work about 7:30 to 1700, also known as 5 p.m. After that, the launch boat that you might see coming and going, the Connor Foss, they take over after hours. Both of us come with tremendous industry experience to be able to do this job well. There's no vacation, there's no breaks, there's no mercy. There is 2 weeks, we are 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. People often say, oh, well, you get 2 weeks of vacation every month. Well, if your idea of vacation is doctor's appointments and chores and laundry, then okay. But it's still a good gig, and I wouldn't go for anything different. There is also no working remotely because of radios, marine radios. The Columbia River is a little bit different from most ports if you think of West Coast, even East Coast. Our major ports, inland and Portland and Vancouver, are about an 8-hour transit. they're not all right here in Astoria, which means we need two sets of pilots. We need the bar pilots, we need the Columbia River pilots as well. Each group brings its own area of expertise to the river system, and we need to work very closely hand in hand to make sure we get things done efficiently, logistically, safely, so we work very closely together. What does a dispatcher actually do? It is more than just assigning pilots to ships. I often refer to it as air traffic control, but for ships. We do assign pilots to ships. We also coordinate inbound and outbound vessels. We manage the anchorage out here. We ensure safe outbound transit, which I will talk about all these things momentarily. Work with coal, if you see coal rip on there, that's the Columbia River pilots, Coast Guard, local agents, launches. Herd cats, wasn't gonna put that on there, decided to put it on there when my counterpart at the River Pilots, I was mentioning about this program, and I was gonna say that, and I thought, well, I probably shouldn't, and he said you can put herd cats on there, and I said, all right, I'm gonna let that on there. That is absolutely true. This is what our dispatch system looks like. You'll see inbound in red, outbound in green. Information or yellow is vessels in the Astoria anchorage. We don't just dispatch for bar pilots, actually, we also dispatch for the river pilots, a little bit, just a little bit. So you'll see our C-SPAN radar, which is, I believe, currently out there. This is an example, so you'll see two pilots assigned to the job, Hill and Ackerman. You'll see this vessel, Royal Knight, this was only taken a day ago. That's gonna be a river pilot vessel. Anything from Astoria Anchorage on, upriver, that is river pilot territory, not bar pilots. And then you'll see some outbound vessels. So if I was gonna assign a pilot to one of these next ships here, it would pull from the first operations pilot and just move on. It's kind of like a continuous wheel. I'll get a little bit more into that. Maritime industry is very old school. We still do things, pen and paper, grease boards, it's all done with a redundancy. So what you just saw here is a physical representation of that for a little bit of a different day. I took this on one of my last days, so you'll see this is replicated in our computers. I've got 7 pilots to work with here, that's a pretty good deal. Sometimes we have less, there is no more. I've got one guy out right here, Captain Black. The 840 refers to the time that I called him. 1540 or 340 refers to the time that he is good till. We are very fatigue oriented. We cannot work pilots outside of their time. It is very important. I get 7 hours during the day for my guys, 5 hours at night. That cutoff is 5 p.m. and it goes till 6 a.m. I've got Captain Boathouse, he is on rest until 9:45. I cannot use him until 9:45, and I got 5 guys ready to go. That's a good day. Here on the callback side, that is an actual list of all of our pilots. We have 15 of them. It's 7 on and 7 off. They do a similar rotation with 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. These are the guys, if you see the little red dash there, those are the people on watch right now. Everybody else is fair game to call back. If we have a busy day and I need to get somebody on their time off, that's who I'm able to call. Old school. We still have an old school logbook. I believe the old logbooks are here in the Maritime Museum. I've got about 5 years worth over in my office over there. Everything's written down. This is a nice redundancy just in case there's an issue with computers or anything. Got the date, the type of vessel, the name, if we use the helicopter or the boat, the time they crossed the bar, the draft, going in and out, gross tons, any sort of notes like if they anchored or if they were hired as an extra, and then the name of the pilot. Lots of information. Drinky here. Lots of info. Let's do that. Okay. My information comes from emails, phone calls, radio calls, River Pilot Dispatch, vessel agents, websites, industry partners, and sometimes my own pilots. We are KOK 360, that is our radio call. You'll hear me a lot on radio channel 9. This is our channel that we reach out to vessels about 3 to 4 hours before they arrive. Very crucial to speak slowly and calmly to the captains. They are 80% non-native English speakers. I give them pilot boarding instructions. If they are being boarded by a helicopter winch or by pilot boat, I let them know the side of the ladder. This is also our working channel for our helicopter, which we do frequent check-ins with. Channel 13 is anything from the CR buoy, buoy 2 inward. This is where I'm going to be listening for an inbound call from one of my guys. That is my cue to call one of the river pilots, as most vessels keep going and I need to have a river pilot ready to take that vessel upriver. I'm also listening for a bridge time. A vessel will call in its bridge time around buoy 14. This lets the Connor Foss, that pilot boat over here, know when to be ready with the river pilot to do the swap out. Listening for anchor times and vessels dropping the hook out here, I call the merchants exchange and let them know what time the vessel anchored. I'm also listening, very importantly, for a tongue point time. Vessels coming this way sailing will call about an hour outside of the time they think they're going to be here. I can have one of my guys ready for that. That'll be a river pilot calling. Channel 16, mostly for hailing an emergency. If I can't get somebody on one of these 9 to 13, I will go to that channel. Okay, vessels. Where the heck do they come from? They're not supposed to just show up. Sometimes they do. For an example, I'm using a grain ship. It's a frequent flyer to these parts. Once it's known that a vessel will be loading at a certain terminal, an agent gets assigned. Several notice of arrivals are filed, some official, some unofficial. U.S. Coast Guard, Maritime Fire and Safety, Columbia River Bar Pilots, and Columbia River Pilots. Vessels give us updates along the way. There might be a delay due to weather or unforeseen circumstances. We need to make sure that wherever they're going, that berth is clear and available for them to go. Or if they're going to anchor, do they have a spot? If Astoria anchor space and time, which I'll talk about in just a minute, because a lot of people are involved in this. Tugs, lines, port security, launch boats, inspectors, bunkers, customs. A lot of people are involved, so we try and line everything up so that things go very smoothly and no money gets lost. That's my face when vessels show up and I don't know about them. We do not like that. It's bad stuff. This is an example of a notice of arrival. This is a check-in, rather, of a vessel, Bellplane, which I think is actually leaving today, if I heard the ship report correctly. Very classic, dear sirs, that happens a lot. Please advise that vessel route to Portland, ETA, 8:45 local time. All going well, weather permitting. Okay, that's great stuff. That helps us know. Well, I know that weather systems are coming. If I start seeing a lot of delays in these emails, I know something's coming down the line. Here's another one, vessel breeze, due on the 24th, 0700 local time. Weather permitting, all going well. Unforeseen circumstances expected. This vessel is a fun one in that it caught fire while it was at Temco, Portland, and it's funny because in 10 years in the industry, my old company did Maritime Fire and Safety. We've never had to actually do that emergency response. I believe they actually had to do it for this vessel. Okay, what do we need to know about a vessel arriving? Well, of course, we need to know what the vessel is. Has it been here before? If it hasn't, we need to enter it as a new vessel. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? Who is handling the vessel? Not just for who do we bill, but if I have questions, who do I ask? When is the vessel coming? That's a pretty important one. Is the vessel in good working order? That's something I don't know that a lot of people think about when these vessels come in. Sometimes they aren't, and it's a varying degree of, well, what's wrong with the vessel. We get something called an LOD, letter of deviation. That usually happens when a vessel's radar isn't working. They have, I believe, 3. So if one doesn't work, it's not a huge deal, but they usually will tell us, Coast Guard that is, daylight only, 2 miles visibility restriction. Sometimes it's worse than that. We get a COTP, that's the captain of the port order. That tells us maybe a vessel needs tugboats coming in to bring it in. Maybe there's something more wrong with it, or perhaps there's a U.S. Coast Guard security boarding. I've not had one of those in about a year's time, but sometimes, depending on where vessels were previously, the Coast Guard will board around buoy 14 with a small boat, and my guys need to know if that's happening. Don't want people with machine guns just like. I compare notes with the Columbia River pilots, and sometimes vessels need to be timed. We don't just work them when they show up. Sometimes we need to make sure that the berth is clear of where they're going. Sometimes vessels come in very deep, and the river pilots want them at a certain time because they want to make sure they have enough water, and they want to make sure they're on the flood tide. Here's an example of our screen when I'm inputting a ship, an inbound ship. You'll see which agent we bill, where the vessel is coming from, when it's due. The ETA source refers to SW as ship's wire. That means the ship emailed me and let me know. There's a variety of options there. Vessel name, vessel type, foreign flagged, how deep it's sitting in the water, name, IMO, that's kind of like a VIN number for cars, gross tonnage, call sign, and then the ship type. Any notes I have, any notes, and I'll have some example of those later. This is what that screen produces. This is our worksheet. So we have inbound, outbound, and then a little sheet showing what's out here. The day I decided to do a little screenshot for this presentation was a very interesting day, and I guess I wouldn't have it any other way. Let's see, that was, so you'll see Impression Bay there, too rough to cross bar. That's a fun little thing that happened, and I'll talk about that. A little bit unusual for me. You'll see a whole bunch of vessels due the next day. Many of them headed to our anchorage. By the way, Rice Island is Astoria Anchorage, but it's just a little bit farther than Tongue Point. That's actually river pilot territory. So we need a river pilot to move those ships. So we have a number of vessels coming in. What happens in the winter time when we do not have enough space, when our anchorage is full, they start to stack up and they start to queue. And so we have an example of that here. I've got a first in line, a second in line, and third in line. I've also got a vessel. You'll see vessels inspected in the morning, so we need to make sure that we get them in a timely manner. We need to make sure that there's enough space for them. This was an odd day. We had the tug Commitment anchored here in emergency, waiting out weather. And we have MSC Ella, that's one of our larger container ships. Didn't come in. I heard they had a 10-foot hole in their bow, so that one got delayed. We'll go on a little bit about that in a moment. Managing the anchorage in Astoria. Why do vessels anchor here? I hear a lot of speculations in social media about why vessels are here and what they're doing. Basically, for the most part, they're waiting for berths upriver. Most of them are grain ships, sometimes soda ash, sometimes potash. A small percentage will come to clean holes, use as an emergency anchorage, waiting out weather like that ATV Commitment, which we saw. There's all the services are available here. We've got we've got inspections, bunkering, customs, 2 major launch companies. They can do crew change, so not a bad idea. Anchoring here involves no river pilots unless you go to Rice Island. That saves a little bit of money. It is also free. The grain berths will call vessels anchored here when they are ready to take them. That is a river pilot job, which we actually call for. Once in a while, we'll have vessels from here actually sailing. If I say sailing, sailing refers to taking out to sea. It doesn't mean doing anything else. We like to do that on a flood tide because at flood tide, vessels are pointed towards the sea. They don't need to tug. Anchoring, we like to anchor on an ebb tide. Reason being, if there's a bunch of vessels in a row, that current coming downriver will slow the vessel down just in case something happens and an anchor doesn't drop. It gives the pilots a little more leeway there. This is a very crude drawing, but this is what I use as like a little dry erase in my office here. This is how I do my little management. So you'll see this is a full anchorage, almost full. North side accommodates larger ships, south side smaller. North side, that's where you see a lot of our grain ships. In that case where I showed you people waiting to come in, I'll kind of like pencil in as those AOM Saviva and Maldivas Luck. Those ones are waiting for vessels to come in. It's just like a normal parking lot where you're waiting for the car to leave so you can get in there. It's managing all that kind of stuff out. We've got, about 5 full-size spaces on the north, 1 smaller one, and about 4 on the south. That first one's a real small spot that's usually reserved for C-SPAN there. And then we actually have 4 spots in Rice Island. One of them is Shoal Inn. This is what it looks like when vessels are waiting outside. I've got those 3 vessels. They drift between 10 and 15 miles out. They check in with me, we know they're there, and they don't go anywhere. We need to make sure that they're not too far away so that they're ready to be called in. It doesn't take them too long to get in. So here you'll see, I did a little fancy little animation here. There's our Shuntong, they're the first ones in. Headhulas Merchant, waiting to come in, all doing about 2 knots. This was a rough seas kind of a day, so they like to motor around a little bit if the seas are kind of rough so that they're not just taking the full force of the ocean. That Impression Bay, I'm gonna come back to that in a minute. Outbound vessels. All right, so outbound vessels, they don't just show up here. We have to be very careful with anything over 40. Our channel is dredged to 43 feet. Thank you, dredgers. Anything over 40 feet needs to be looked at because of river levels. We constantly review these to make sure that it is safe for their transit. We get this daily report from the Port of Portland called the LoadMax, which you see here, and I know it's a little bit blurry, but I'll have a zoomed in version in a minute. And we review, not just myself or our pilots, but River Pilot Dispatch also reviews this to make sure vessels can transit safely because of this. This is probably, I think, representing like a 43-foot grain ship. That's the only clearance that's underneath. So if anybody's wrong, we need to make sure that there's no groundings that occur. Super important that that doesn't happen. Here is a zoomed in version. Now this one is a little more complicated maybe than a daily one, but I chose it intentionally. This is during king tides. With king tides, we have quite a run out, which is something, there's 2 things we need to keep an eye on. Not just the river level, but also the run out. With the king tide, we see, I've got like a 9.5 at 1400. My gosh, at 2200, 10 p.m., negative 2.23, which I don't know if I've ever seen. I'm sure it has been. Wow, that really stuck out to me. Anything over 10.5 feet of run out, we need to scrutinize extra heavily. We need to cut that off an hour after high water. From what I've heard, when our guys take it out there and crossing the bar, that run out, that heavy pull of water can actually start moving the ship around. They don't like that. So we need to make sure that that doesn't happen. We need to restrict those times. not just from the river levels of the bottom of the river there, but for the current runout. So I've got some major restrictions on a 41 footer, on a 43 footer for that day. You'll see, no matter what, after 40 feet, after that high water mark, we are cut off. Depending on how deep the ship is loaded, depends on when we can start seeing them. So anything less will have a smaller window. For example, that 41 footer, they are okay through the next low. They don't come into the danger zone, but that 43 footer, we're looking for 4 feet on a fall and 3 on a rise. So you see at 06 there, it's 5.24, and 07, 3.4. So I try and find somewhere where the 4 is. I give that to one of my guys, they sign off on it. That I tell the river pilots, and I tell them, hey, you cannot sail this vessel at this time. We need you to be here between midnight 30 and 6:30 or after 11:15. These notes go on our outbound sheet. Here's a little sample of an outbound menu per se. Sometimes we can say okay through low. Sometimes they have those tidal restrictions on them. You'll see the numbers written there in red. That is the time when we expect them to be here. It is very important to figure that out, because sometimes, when we need to plan for pilots, we need to know who can work what ship. A lot of stuff goes into this. What is the tide doing? Who's on board? But that is just a guess. This is a little bit unusual because we do have the C-span. Most stuff doesn't sail from here, but once in a while we do have one that do. Okay, so this is the whole worksheet. I don't know why I tried to get an answer to this. It's called a dope sheet. Working out the sheet is doping the sheet. It sounds ridiculous to me, but whatever. It is what it is. So doping the sheet is something we have to do multiple times a day, unless it's maybe really dead and then we don't really have reason to. If we have enough pilots, okay, no problem. We have to figure out when the vessels will be here. Do we have enough pilots? So many things to consider here. Oh my gosh. Okay. So the numbers on the bottom here correspond with my numbers. They're kind of on the right. I've got those pilots on duty. So I'm assigning kind of pilots to each job based on when I think the outbounders will be here, inbounders. I've also handwritten, as you see, Loadhouse in black there. I'm guessing as to guys that are currently out on vessels when they'll be back in the office, when I can use them again. There's so much that goes into this. Are we boat only? What's the tide doing? Are fatigue rules in place? It can get a little bit crazy. If by around noon I figure, oh my gosh, we don't have enough people, that's when I start calling people on their time off. 2 means of pilot transport. We've got our pilot boat and pilot ladder. We've got our Seahawk helicopter, and they board by pilot winch. Of course, I could not come here and not have any super fun videos. So, and I believe I have to do something a little bit different for this one, so bear with me just 1 second. Here is a video of a pilot boarding by Pilot Boat. This was November 2020. Looking at the video, I'm gonna guess this is between 10 and 15 foot seas, so kind of right getting to the cusp of that we're gonna maybe suspend service. But we did go out to this vessel. Let's see if we can get this going here. This is Captain Steve Ackerman going up to SM Tianjin. Quite a bit of dips in the sea there. See why these guys have money that they do in this video. So they're approaching the vessel. You see the crewmen coming down the gangway. There's Captain Ackerman with his locator blinking, just in case. He's getting ready. I believe you're gonna give some commands to the crew about that pilot ladder, which they see something they don't like. They can't hear them, they're just doing visual signs. Okay, so they drop that ladder a little bit. Big swing. Now it's a timing game. We try and board these by helicopter if possible, but sometimes we can't. Here's a good moment. Look how the vessel then drops way back down. So, just in time. Those container ships. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I can listen to some of this on the radio, but really seeing these videos is nothing compared to what I can hear on the radio. Let's see. I believe the next, I can just kind of go here. Okay. We also board by helicopter. This is a completely different scenario. I actually took this video, this was, I believe, March 1st, 2022. Seas actually aren't too bad. It is a little cloudy and foggy out, but the seas aren't too bad. This is the most efficient means of pilot boarding. It also is probably the safest, depending on the view there, but this is a American tanker vessel, Ohio, frequent flyer, Chimney's River here. Come over the vessel, lower the pilot safely. This was my first time on board a helicopter. I understand why it's, everybody loves it. Crazy experience doing this in person though. Definitely different from looking at it on videos. So they put the pilot down. We're now off the Astoria Airport. This would be around 5 miles west of the CR buoy. Another small video with our, speaking of our helicopter. This was taken January 2023. This shows seas that we're right at the level of really not working. I believe this is about 18, 20-foot seas. Not super different from what's happening today. You can see the waves breaking the jetty. We're pulling, I believe this is Captain Black off of an outbound vessel. I think this was the time it was determined we're not working any more ships for a minute or two. He was able to get off that one safely, but it's a little bit rough. So you see an interesting blue hue from this vessel. I was told that was from oxygen turning in the water. Rough seas out there. here's I'm gonna go to a video here in just a second, so I'm not gonna go full screen, but kind of a picture of what vessels tend to do when our pilot helicopter Seahawk is taking a vessel, pilot off of a vessel. I'll hear them report to the helicopter if there's any roll, if there's any pitch on the vessel, if there's what the wind conditions are. And another Captain Ackerman video from, I believe, October last year, in showing kind of the pitch and roll of a vessel. He told me that right before he shot this video, he ordered crewmen off of the bow. Sometimes crewmen will be kind of running up and down the length of the ship there, and some crewmen were on the bow, and he said, no, you really need to get off of that, and you'll see why. Let's see. I don't know if there's enough sound, but what you hear in the sound is the stuff in the bridge clanging back and forth, because that's something that I hear about all type of items crashing back and forth. Okay, there's something. It's probably out by just past the Cedar Buoy. That's why people are not allowed on the bow. It can be crazy out there. Sometimes people that crew that haven't been in here before don't understand what this bar is like. And I believe he told me that when just before he shot this video, he's like, okay, everybody needs to come back. And they're like, no, it's fine. Like, no, really, you need to come back. It's a tough bar. Okay, that was easy. Okay. Bar closures. Weather is always scrutinized, especially in the wintertime. We will sometimes get a heads up from the Northwest the Weather Service desk. If I see them calling, I know something's going on. I passed this on to number one. Number one refers to that bar pilot rotation. It's a wheel, so who's ever next up for a job, that's currently the pilot on duty. It's nice because it kind of splits up the responsibility. All vessels scheduled to come in or leave are very scrutinized. First on the chopping block are what's called ATVs. Those are articulated tug and barges. Those are Sound Reliance, Sea Reliance, Ocean Reliance, Vision, any sort of a petroleum barge that you see. Because of their design, they do not handle more than about 13-foot seas. So they're the first to be, they'll just say, we're not coming in, or we'll stay upriver, or we'll park in the anchorage while we wait out weather. The other ones on the chopping block are those deep 43-foot Panamax. Although they do have the ballast, they are heavy ships, they are usually larger, and they don't handle so well, so those are the first to be restricted. Work very closely with the river pilots and agents, so I can tell people if your ship is delayed, if it can be let in and when. That's super important for commerce. And we also notify all industry partners what the current bar status is. Right now we're at yellow. I believe we went to yellow this morning. We were Valentine's Day red, but we're now yellow. This is a tool we use to look at what the seas might be. Our threshold is about between 16, anything after 16, we're really gonna be looking at it. Pilots don't like to work anything above 16 or 17. This is a NOAA-based website. The middle one shows the seas. So we see 14, 15, 15, 14, and now it's kind of starting to subside. That's when we can tell our industry partners, okay, we're gonna stop vessel traffic for this time, but we'll look at working it maybe the next morning because it looks pretty good. Yeah. So when I did this presentation, when I was doing slideshows for this presentation, and I did this little screenshot to show all the vessels that are waiting to come in for anchorage, and I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at, okay, yep, they're doing, 3 knots, 2 knots, whatever. And then I look at this vessel Impression Bay, which has a bar pilot on and is headed inbound. And I'm looking at this only for the reason of this presentation. And I'm reviewing my slide and going, okay, vessels transiting the bar usually do 11 or 12 knots. Over the bar, it's important to get your speed going. I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the position of this vessel. If you can see the channel going this way, the vessel pointing like this and doing 3 knots. I am now alerted that there is a problem with the ship. So I know something's going on. This is a king tide. This is a yellow bar. This is an empty ship. This is a small ship. This is kind of worst case scenario on all accounts. I am not calling this pilot. This guy who's on board has enough to deal with. I'm not gonna bother him. I'm gonna wait. I did call the pilot boat who put him on. Our helicopter is not working at the time. And I said, are you seeing this? And he said, yeah. The pilot boat also barely got back in. They weren't sure that because the seas were building, because of the tides, they almost had to stay out. They barely got back in. Now we're looking at this going, okay, so what's going on? He says, I can't go back out there. I can't get that guy. We'll have to see what happens. About 30 seconds later, the pilot on board, I can see him calling me. Just answered, hi, how's it going? And he's like, yeah, well, we can't come in. We can't come in right now. So what he ended up doing was turning around, headed back out to sea, waited for the flood tide. It's much easier for pilots to come in on a flood tide because they have that motion of the surge of the tide coming with them as opposed to trying to battle a major ebb tide. So he decided he needed to stay on board. I think he was on there about 7 hours before he had to come in. But he did it safely, and it all worked out. Just a very long day for him. And I've not seen a pilot turn a vessel around at the CRV before. That was a new thing, and which I only caught from doing slides for this. I mean, I would have figured it out eventually, but. Bar openings, harder than bar closures, because everything happens at once. We usually have a pilot go out ahead of time. We don't just open the floodgates. We have one pilot go out kind of like on a test ship and see how the sea conditions are. If it looks good, then we reopen the bar. We coordinate with all parties involved so everybody can safely enter and leave. We have to also coordinate with the tugboats because if you think about like this bottleneck of ship activity, everything gets kind of stuck upriver and then all of a sudden everything's ready to go. Well, there's only a certain amount of tugboats to help let those vessels go. Also a certain amount of river pilots. We need to make sure everybody has enough manpower. We need to make sure we have enough people. I'm usually calling people on their time off to see if they can come back. And then we coordinate, even if we have, everybody has enough people, we have to coordinate this parade of outbounders to make sure we can, get people on and off efficiently. That's my face when I'm doing this, by the way. It's pure madness. Getting to the end here, so when people ask me if my job is stressful, it can be an 11 out of 10. It can also be a 1 out of 10. In the summer, when there's not much going on, no problem. Bar openings can be one of the roughest parts of my job. So here, these aren't all responsibilities that I'm going to list for you. These are things that happen all at once. So, is the helicopter in the air? Because when the helicopter's in the air, we have to keep track of when they are, just in case there's an incident, we need to know where they last checked in with us. If the helicopter's in the air, we cannot use the radio. They get first dibs on what's going on. Did you order a cabin? for a pilot. If a pilot's going inbound or outbound, they will need cabs to get back to where they need to go. You cannot forget about them, otherwise they're stuck at the airport or somewhere. Did you call river pilot? Is a vessel coming in and needs a river pilot to go upriver? Well, you better call one of them, or you're gonna have a vessel sitting out here with nobody to take it anywhere. That doesn't make people happy. Keeping track of vessels coming in. Foreign vessels, you know, coming in, maybe they've been here before, maybe they haven't. They don't know they're supposed to stay 5 miles from that CR buoy of ours. If they get coming in too close, I have to yell at them. Stay out, stay out, stay out. You can't get in too close, otherwise it gums up the mix, so to speak there. Vessels coming in, have I told them what they're doing? Have I given them ladder instructions? Have I told them their pilot is boarding by helicopter? Have I told them to please wait at 5 miles? And to write all this stuff down to make sure that everybody gets told once, not twice, and of course, worst case scenario, not at all. Vessels meeting, this is something that people don't really think about, but when we have vessels coming from upriver, and we have vessels coming in, we have one pilot boat here. Sometimes we have something called a quadruple. 2 vessels coming out, 2 vessels coming in. We need 4 pilots ready. We need to make sure that we have everybody available early so that that pilot boat is ready and doesn't have to come back in and vessels get delayed, because that can be hard to work with. Do pilots need to be called early? Are we boat only? Do we have our helicopter? Our pilot boat takes an hour to get outside, which is something to consider. So if we're trying to play the logistics game, I need to make sure, sometimes I need to call guys early for their job to make sure we have them ready in the place they need to be. It's to have you call the pilot for the next job. It's, you know, they keep coming and it's quick and you don't want to forget about anybody. Does everybody know the plan? Especially that launch boat. They need to know what's happening and how many people they're picking up and dropping off and what the order is. Is my head still attached? I don't know. Again, this really is my face when this happens, because all of these things are literally at once. I'm not joking. This is just a random slide for weird things that happen on my job. That was that weird houseboat that came through, I think a summer ago. I had to call the agent for that vessel to tell them that their ship was hit by a house. And just, you know, wanted me to follow up on that. And she just started laughing, like, yeah, I'm glad you're taking that easy. That's good. Weird, a lot of weird circumstances that come up. So this is pretty much the end. Want to give a shout out, and I didn't even mention too much, Knappton Cove Heritage Center directly across the way here. A museum I've been volunteering for a while. Super amazing place. We're just kind of getting stuff going from COVID, and we have a lot of cool stuff planned for this year. That if you do an online search in Facebook, we're on there. It's an amazing place. It's like if vessels came out here, like they do now, and if they failed inspection back between, we'll say 1899, 1900 to 1938, they failed inspection. They were sent across the river and inspected, vessels and crew, and looked at who was on board. There's so much interesting stuff there. I can't even begin to get into it, but please do look that up and come see us across the river this summer. Ship report, of course. Joanne is awesome. Her podcast and her website are amazing. I heard it this morning while I was getting ready to come here. Super cool and very interesting stuff. Marine traffic is just a way to, if you're curious about like what ships are doing out here and where they're going, very, very great free website. Windy is another one that doesn't matter if you're into maritime stuff or not. If you live out here, that is a super cool website that shows what direction the wind is blowing and what the forecasts are. They've got a really cool visual deal going there. Our website and the River Pilots website will tell you what we're doing. Just like a public view of vessels coming in and out. So if you're curious of cruise ships or, you know, those huge container ships or military ships, they will show up on there. I think that's basically it. I appreciate everybody coming and spending their Valentine's Day with me. I will answer any questions that I can, but if I can't, I will be honest with you and tell you I can't.
Thank you. While we figure out our fun microphone situation. We will hopefully be coming around with a mic to ask questions. We do ask that you wait until we get there with a mic so that everyone can hear, and then you can answer.
Very good.
I got it. Wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. That was very informative.
Thanks.
Two questions. What is bunkering? And then you said after you're off, you turn it over to the launch. What is that?
Yeah, bunkering is basically fueling the ships. A barge comes and gives them fuel. I don't know why they call it that, but fueling. Yes, and we are a little different. I know that other bar pilot organizations will have 24/7. I mean, it's not that we don't have 24/7 watch standard, we do. But we try and set up as much stuff during the day as we can. At 5 p.m., we've tried to get everything kind of ironed out for the night. It never usually works that way, but we tried. And then we turn our phones and the dispatch duty over to 14th Street Foss, which runs that Connor Foss. Mm-hmm. And they will then take over for assigning pilots to ships that night, answering any questions needed, but we try and set them up as best as possible. Our job isn't 24/7, but I do get calls at 2 and 3 in the morning sometimes to answer some questions. Not all the time, but it does happen.
Question about the pilots, obviously mode of transportation to get on or off. We have the bar pilot vessel, and then we have the helicopter. And more often than not, the more reliable one is probably the vessel versus the helicopter in terms of availability. But is there a preference that the pilots have, and is that kind of a interesting juggle of trying to get them what they want versus what is available?
Yeah, our helicopter, really everybody prefers. It is the most efficient. I mean, like, as I said, from our pilot boats are in Skipanon, it takes about an hour to get out to where the pilots board, about 5 miles west of Sierra Buoy, versus 15 minutes on that helicopter. So if we're really juggling up against time limits with the ships and trying to get people what we call back on the board, back in their rest times to get people going again, that helicopter is definitely preferred. The helicopter is a fickle one. It's, which I understand, you know, that will be taken out of service for the smallest of warning light, which I completely understand. That needs to be super safe. I get it, it's FAA regulated. But that will be out of commission, so we do the best we can with that, but sometimes we're boat only. I think we're boat only right now. We just got a new helicopter, it has some issues. I think we might get our old one in service again. But the other thing to consider is some jobs are boat only and some are if we can, helicopter only. If there's no space to land on the deck, or the helicopter usually doesn't land, excuse me, if there's no space to winch a pilot down. Some of those container ships, when they come in fully loaded, there are no open bays, there are no bridge wings, they have to be boat only. Some of the military ships here have weird and funky designs that come in and go to Swan Island, so we do the best we can with what we have available. Traditionally though, the helicopter is preferred, but not always available.
So you mentioned the Coast Guard. Do they also require a bar pilot coming in and out?
Coast Guard does not, actually. Their ships that kind of frequent in and out are under their own, there's this crazy set of rules that I always have to look at for if there's any question. It's like a flow chart, basically. Coast Guard does not require a bar pilot or tugs.
Thanks for being here. That's what I love about these talks. Opportunity to meet people like you.
Thank you.
Why don't we charge for anchorage?
That's a great question. One that really I don't necessarily have the answer to, other than it's kind of like a communal waterway. It kind of is like a big parking spot that nobody owns necessarily. So in fact, I don't believe any anchorages on this river are charged. The only thing that comes into play is vessels. If you're anchoring upriver, if you're a deep draft ship and you require a tug or you require a buoy, if you need to be tied up to that, that will require money. But I don't believe any anchorage, if you're just dropping the hook, as they say, I don't believe there's anywhere in the river that's, and I think that's kind of a universal thing, I think.
All right, this will be our last question.
So I watch the Conifos frequently, and I see him coming up, snugging up, and I often see the bar pilot going up the ladder. How often, or does the bar pilot coming off and the river pilot going on, does that happen simultaneously with the same visit by the Conifos?
It's about 15 minutes difference, because what they do is they talk on board. So we'll use an example of a vessel coming inbound. So bar pilot's on, they will put the river pilot on, they chat, they talk about the ship, they talk about any weird stuff's going on with it, where it's going, that kind of thing. There's about 10-15 minutes, and then you'll see the Conifos staying alongside. Then once we get out here a little bit, then you'll see the bar pilot get off. So either way, it's about 10-15 minutes where they do a pass off.
That was my next question, because I see it snugged up there for 10-15 minutes, just
Yes.
stays with it.
Yes.
Because they're waiting for the bar pilot to come off.
Yes, yes, and sometimes it takes a while to get up to the bridge on some of those ships.
Wonderful. Well, let's give one more round of applause. All right. Thank you for joining us this winter for our Past or Present series. The learning and the fun doesn't end here, so we always have more opportunities for you to learn and enjoy the museum. Just a few that I wanted to highlight is we are relaunching Sensory Sunday, and that'll be the first Sunday of the month for the first hour. We'll have a little bit calmer space for you, and that will start on March 5th. We also have a Seize the Day trivia night planned for Saturday, March 18th. And then we have 3 weeks of spring break programming, which will run March 27th through April 14th. So you can find more information on our website or on any social media platforms. Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Let me get this.
Good morning, and I'm in a bit shock. I'm baffled. We all know why. I used to sneak in and stand in the hallway out there when you were giving your presentation on the river chart. I was like, I don't know more about the river. Who made the chart? So, stunned. See you around. Doing something.